I believe that survival has a lot to do with conservation. Conservation of body heat, conservation of water, and conservation of calories, and conservation of resources that you have available to help you provide for those things. Solar ignition is the most efficient form of ignition and should be used whenever possible. And when using a solar method of ignition, your goal is to make an ember, not a flame. Now, in order to do this, one side of the fire triangle needs to be removed, or at least restricted, so that it smolders rather than flames up. And in this case, we're going to be taking away the air. And then once that's smoldering, we can place that into a tinder bundle, reintroduce the air, and blow it into flame. Now, one method of doing this is to take dry natural tinder and compress it down into a tiny little ball. Another great method is to find some poo. But not just any poo. Rabbits, hares, and pikas are herbivores and they're hindgut digesters, and they're found all over the world. And those guys are the guys that make the poo you're looking for. Hindgut digesters ingest plant material, and they break that down into two components. You have nutrient-rich pellets that are called cecotropia that are then re-ingested, and what they leave behind is a mostly indigestible fiber pellet. And the benefit of that from a survival perspective is that it provides the survivor with a densely compacted, finely processed fiber pellet that's a readily available natural tinder that's already been compacted into a pellet that's perfect for solar ignition. Now here I've got a little bird's nest tinder bundle, and what I've got is some broom's edge that I've made into a bird's nest, and then I took some finely shredded cedar bark for the inside of the nest. Now of course I could just put the pellets right inside this little bird's nest like little poo eggs, but I want to show you how I use the solar ignition. So I'm going to put it on this little piece of bark, and then once it's smoldering I'll transfer it into the nest. I'll take about 3 little poo pellets, and these are so tightly compacted that there's zero air except for the outside. I need to let a little bit more air in there. So what I'll do is I'll take these 3 and I'll compress them together into a pile. For solar I want something that's at least 4 power, so I could use something as simple as this wallet-sized Fresnel lens. I prefer this larger double convex lens. This allows me to gather and focus more energy on my tinder. What I need to do with the lens is I need to center the light in the shadow. So that way I have it at the proper angle. While the light is centered in the shadow, move it over the poo, and then move the lens closer to focus that energy. You can see it immediately starts smoking. Usually what I'll do is I'll let it sit there for a good 20 to 30 seconds after it starts smoking, and I'll kind of move the circle around a little bit to kind of spread the ember. And I'll know that it's done and actually burning on its own when I can take away the focused light energy and it'll still smolder. That should be about right. Now while that's smoldering and while that's fusing, I'm going to come around, I'm going to back the camera out so I can show you what we do from here. That should be good. All right, so I'm not in a hurry. Right now I'm trying to get this to fuse into an ember, into a coal that I can place in here that's not going to fall apart. Now like I said before, I could have just placed the poo in here, some little poo bird eggs, and lit them directly in there, and that saves me the trouble of having to transfer it over and risking dropping it. But for the sake of this video, I wanted to make sure you saw how I did the actual initial ignition. Once I've got it going, I then need to transfer the poo into the bird's nest. Being careful not to drop it. Alright, so I've transferred it. I'll just wrap this loosely around it and start to blow. Now, I'm blowing real easy at first because I want to get it established. But as the smoke starts to billow, I'll start to increase the force. Once it starts to billow, I'll start to increase the force. Once it's burning, I'll flip it over and place it into my fire lay. And there you have it, the poo fire. And remember, survival is about conservation. So every chance you get, always use natural resources that are available to you so you can save the stuff that you brought with you for a rainy day.